Hey everyone, I am here today to talk about the books that I read during the month of May, and I read 6 novels and 2 plays for a total of 8 books read through May. So wanted to do a quick recap of everything that I read, quick thoughts, and yeah, so let's get started. And I know that I feel like when people watch booktube and really like any book talk, bookstagram, whatever, people like to see the person hold up like physical copies of the book, but I just want to say I only have 2 physical copies. Everything else, one of the things I read is back in Texas, and then the other one, everything else were library books. So I only have 2 physical books to show you, but that doesn't mean I can't talk about everything that I read. So the first book that I read in May was Driver Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. I think that's how you pronounce it. But this was Dua Lipa's pick for her book club in January, and I'm a little disappointed that I didn't like it. It feels like it should have been a book that I really, really liked, that should have been right up my alley. It's a mystery book. There's animals and a mystery involving animals, and a quirky character. It seemed to have everything that I would usually like. I really like that genre of book, but for whatever reason I just didn't resonate with it. I don't know if it's the translation, because it is originally written in Polish, so obviously I read the English translation, so I don't know if there's just something in the translation that didn't speak to me. I don't know, but I was kind of disappointed that I didn't like it, because it seemed to have all the elements that I should have liked, but it wasn't for me. And it's very it's received so many awards and everything, but for me personally, I think I gave it like 2 stars. I really was not a fan of it. The next book that I read is The Bee Sting by Paul Murray, which was Dua Lipa's book club pick for February. So yes, I'm very behind on her book club, but I'm catching up little by little. So this was, as I said, the February pick, and I really liked this one. Now, this is a massive book. It's 600 something pages, closer to 700 pages, but it is so good. I was very interested in the characters. I was very invested from all of them. Like, it hooked me in from the beginning, and I enjoyed all 600 something pages of it. And yeah, this was a 4-star read for me. I really, really liked it. And I will say this book ends on a cliffhanger. So I don't mind books or movies for that matter that end in a cliffhanger. Doesn't bother me, but if you are like my mom, hates cliffhangers, like, you need to tie that ending up with a nice little bow, whether it be a good bow or a bad bow. It needs to be tied up neat and pretty. If you're like my mom in that sense, this might not be the book for you to invest 650 or 600 whatever pages and then to get to the end and have it just end in a cliffhanger. Might be really disappointing for some people, but it didn't bother me. I was very invested, and that final chapter, the final 100 pages, like I said, I was very invested from beginning to end, but those final few pages really had me on the edge of my seat, and I was on the subway really tense, waiting to see what was going to happen next. So I highly recommend that one. The next book that I read is I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai, and this is her memoir. It's a few years old now, but I had never read it before, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I recommend it. This was a 3.7 or 3.5 star rating is what I gave it. I did like it, and I do recommend it, but I think there was just something about the writing, like the cadence of the writing, that took a while for me to get into. But the actual story, like Malala's actual memoir, and different aspects of her life, I really did enjoy that. The next book that I read was for the podcast, and that was The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. So that's actually going to be the episode that's coming out this Thursday, if you're interested in checking that out. But yeah, this was actually my third time reading this book. And this will probably be the last time that I read this book. You might be wondering why I'm reading it 3 times. The first time I hated it. The second time I didn't love it, but I liked it a little bit more than the first time I read it. But the second time I read it was more give it a chance, because a lot of people said it was really funny. Still wasn't for me, but I appreciated it a lot more. And then this third time reading it was specifically for the podcast. But yeah, it's still not for me. It's not my kind of humor. It's very British humor, but I feel like it's very niche kind of British humor. And it's science fiction. Science fiction is not my genre. So didn't hate it by any means, but it's not something that I want to read again. Third time was it, and the only reason I read it a third time was for the podcast. But yeah, just really not for me. Not something that this is the kind of humor that's hit or miss for some people, and it was a miss for me. It's not for me. But the next book that I read is The World According to Kunk by Philomena Kunk, and I believe she started off on YouTube. I'd actually never heard of her until her Netflix show came out. And again, this is very British humor. This is a little bit more my style. There was definitely passages in here that had me laughing. So if you really like the show, or if you've seen any of her YouTube videos, I say pick it up, check it out. It is very funny, very silly. And yeah, this is more of the kind of British humor that I'm into personally. The next one that I read is Little Women by Kate Hamill. And so this is a modern adaptation for the stage that premiered a few years ago in New York. I was already in New York when it premiered. So it was I want to say it came out in 2018, 2019, and then it had a premiere before that, but the New York premiere happened in 2018, 2019, something like that. And yeah, it wasn't my favorite adaptation of Little Women. I liked some of the more modern elements that Kate Hamill brought to it, but it's not my favorite adaptation, but I'm really curious to see what it would have been like on stage. The next play that I read was Waiting for the Host, a play for stage or stream in 2 parts by Mark Palmieri. And this is what I read on the plane ride back from Texas to New York. So yeah, I was visiting family, and Little Women was one of the plays that I have in Texas. So I was finally reading it. This one I brought with me on the plane, and I read it. And yeah, I mean, this was meant to be a Zoom production, and even though he says that there's been live productions of it, and he kind of described how it worked, I feel like this works best for Zoom. And I don't know, I have a hard time. I don't feel like it would be as engaging on stage just seeing people sitting in their separate little squares on stage to represent the little Zoom rooms. So I don't know, I thought it was cute, it was clever, but it's for Zoom, and Zoom theater is I still appreciate Zoom theater and what we can do. I still have Zoom stuff to do online, but yeah, to see something on Zoom, I'd rather see it in person. I think most of us do. And then the last book that I read in May was Dua Lipa's March book club pick, which is There by Tommy Orange. I actually finished reading that one yesterday on the last day of May. So it just made the cut. And I really enjoyed this one too. This one's very similar to The Bee Sting in that the last few pages really had me tense. It doesn't necessarily end on a cliffhanger, but there are some loose ends that don't get tied up. Again, that doesn't bother me, and if it bothers you, I would say still give it a shot, because it's a much more manageable 290 pages, so much shorter, not investing as much time to kind of be disappointed by the ending if that's not your style of ending. But I highly recommend it. The prologue has a very quick history on Native Americans and like very quick 10-page Cliff Notes kind of version, but there's so much in there in those 10 pages. And I ended up learning something of American history that I'd never heard about reading this book, and that was the Native American takeover of Alcatraz in protest. So I had never heard about this, and I live in the United States. I don't know if that's something you learn in California, because that's where it took place, but it definitely wasn't something they taught us in Texas, which I'm not surprised. But yeah, all the characters are very interesting, and I really enjoyed getting to know these little snippets of each character and seeing how their lives are gonna intertwine. So I thought that was really cool, and this is definitely a book I'm interested in reading again, and just now that I know what happens and I know the characters a little bit more, because I do feel like I missed some things. I reread the prologue and I was like, this is a very interesting prologue, but I feel like I didn't absorb it. And then I was rereading like certain passages and I was like, I missed that the first time around, but I think a lot of it has to do, you're getting introduced to so many characters that you don't really start seeing how their lives intertwine the first read around. So I definitely want to read it again, knowing what happens, knowing the characters a little bit more, and just really seeing how their lives intertwine and just really get that clear picture. But that is it for what I read in the month of May. And my next video, I will talk about what books I am planning to read in June. So thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe, give this a like, and I will see you next time. Bye.